So it turns out that Israel has decided to sue the New York Times for libel. And this is in the wake of the story, you probably heard about it, that Nicholas Kristof, a columnist, a nutcase of a columnist for the New York Times, published a piece. The New York Times published a column of his alleging that Israel trains dogs to rape Palestinian prisoners. That's right. That's what he claimed. And it's just insanity. But a lot of people believe it. It was in the New York Times. And Israel is apparently decided to sue. So we're going to get into all of that. But let's start off our story with a clip here from Batya Unger-Sargon.
You might not know it, but May is Jewish Heritage Month in the United States. So it was especially galling when the New York Times ran a front-page opinion piece by columnist Nicholas Kristof, which claimed that, among other things, Israel had trained dogs to rape Palestinian prisoners. Yep, you heard that right. The New York Times, the one-time paper of record, the definitive legacy newspaper of this country, published an outright fabrication that Israelis had somehow overcome the laws of nature and taught dogs to rape Palestinians. It's astonishing that this needs to be said, but Jews trained dogs to rape prisoners is an IQ test. And if you believe it, you just failed. What's worse is the piece preempted by a day the publication of the most comprehensive report of the sexual crimes that Hamas had committed against Israeli men, women, and children on October 7th and after. They gang raped men and women before dismembering them. They sexually tortured the hostages they took, including the little girls. They committed crimes too horrific to repeat. Yet the day before this report came out, this report of actual crimes by Palestinians against Israeli Jews, the Times went with a fabricated report of Jewish crimes against Palestinians. It's atrocity inversion. It's victimhood envy. And it's just the purest form of anti-Semitism.
That about sums it up. Okay, the New York Times pushed this story of trained dogs to rape prisoners. And Batya is right. It's an IQ test. And if you believe it, you failed. So she, first of all, she talks about overcoming the laws of nature. Let's just put this to rest here. Here's a piece from India Today. Can dogs penetrate humans? New York Times op-ed on rape of Palestinians by IDF sparks outrage. And then down in the piece, they get into the whole issue. Check this out. After the op-ed was published by the New York Times, a massive debate started on whether dogs can penetrate humans. People claimed online that they began researching whether it's actually possible. Quote, "It's impossible to train dogs for this. This is absurd propaganda," posted Emily Schrader, an Israeli journalist. Dogs, quote, "Dogs cannot anatomically rape humans. As a physician, I thought I would just point that out. Why are anti-Semites such idiots?" A US-based physician, Sheila Nazarian, wrote. And look at this one. Eli Lake, writing for the Free Press, said Kristof's dog rape story doesn't pass muster. Lake quotes inputs from Brandon McMillan, a 3-time Emmy-winning host of CBS's Lucky Dog, who has decades of training animals for argument. Quote, "The story of trained rape dogs does not hold up. Let's start with what is known about the biology of male dogs. Their penises are small and thin. They become erect only when they smell the pheromones of a female dog in heat," wrote Lake. Brandon McMillan told me he had never heard of a dog who was trained to rape a human being and doubted that this was possible. I'm not going to belabor this point. Now, what Batya was referring to about the report, so literally a day or two before, after Kristof's piece ran, was when this report was scheduled to be released. It has been released, this Silence No More report. And what it is a very extensive report on all of the atrocities, the sexual atrocities committed on October 7th, far more extensive than anything we have seen previously. Let me just sum up a little bit here. They interviewed, for this report, they reviewed over 10,000 photographs and videos, over 1,800 hours of visual analysis. They conducted over 430 interviews with survivors, witnesses, returned hostages, and experts. So it's a massive level of documentation. Whenever everyone was saying, "Oh, the rapes on October 7th were a hoax. They didn't really rape people," this is the evidence, and it's a very comprehensive report. It's not done by the Israeli government. It's done by an independent research organization that did it. And you can find this report and you should download it. You should go find it and download it. You can find it on the Civil C. It's the Civil Commission on the October 7th Crimes by Hamas. Go to civilc.org. I mean, the atrocities that they outline in there are unbelievable. It's very difficult to describe, and Batya mentions a few of them in that clip. But it's pretty clear that the timing of this Christoph piece had in mind to overshadow or to balance out this report that was coming out about the sexual crimes that were committed on October 7th. That's what just makes it even more insidious. So go to Civil C, the word civil with the letter C after it, civilc.org, download that report, send it to people, send it to your elected officials. I just cut a video for Israel 365 News going deeply into this report. It's pretty viewer discretion advised. We don't show pictures. I'm saying even about the things that are described in the video. You can find that on the Israel 365 News channel. And while we're at it, there's an event that's taking place a couple days from now, Wednesday, May 20th. We are having a webinar at 1 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. in Israel. Will America First stand with Israel? Exploring the complicated relationship right now between the America First movement and Israel. And I will be leading the panel. And my panelists joining me will be Josh Hammer, senior editor-at-large at Newsweek and host of the Josh Hammer Show, very important public intellectual. Dr. David Wormser, senior analyst for Middle East Affairs at the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C. He also served in a number of White Houses and in the National Security Council as a Middle East expert over the decades, phenomenal expert on the Middle East and the U.S.-Israel relationship, and Pastor Rob McCoy, who is co-founder of TPUSA Faith, senior pastor of Godspeak Calvary Chapel, but mainly known for being Charlie Kirk's spiritual guide and mentor. Charlie Kirk's pastor. He and Charlie were very close. They traveled together a lot. And Pastor Rob knows the America First movement very well. So you can go to the link in the description of this video, which is Israel 365/America First, or you could click on, let me find it here. Let me pull it up. You could click on the picture in this here on this. You can click on this QR code. If you can pause the video right now, click on the QR code, or just click on it while I'm talking. That QR code, you can register for the webinar. If you register, if you can't make it at that time, even though it's a live webinar, you will be able to see clips of the webinar. We're going to post all the segments on the Israel 365 News site, and we're also going to email it out. If you register and you can't make it, that will get you'll get emailed the full webinar. It's going to be a very important conversation. So please join us for that on Wednesday. Okay, let's move on with this wild story here. Now, besides the fact that dogs are physically incapable of raping human beings, and the fact that it's pretty clear that this was done in order to overshadow the Silence No More, the Silence No More rape on October 7th report. There's also another issue here that was pointed out online. Take a look at this. Regarding the Christoph column, let's put aside the dog rape stuff and focus on one additional specific example of why it was such poor and indefensible journalism. There were two named victims of sexual assault by Israeli soldiers in Christoph's column. One of them is Issa Amro. He was detained and interrogated for 10 hours on October 7th. The only problem, he himself put out the below video about what happened to him that day. I will link to it in this week's newsletter. In the video, he claims his hands were tied tightly, they cursed at him, and he was hit several times. But at no point does he suggest anything even close to sexual assault. 2 weeks later, he was interviewed by ABC News. Again, no mention of sexual assault. He would later be interviewed by the Washington Post and would claim he was threatened with sexual assault, but not that it occurred. This person repeatedly talked about the events that day and never once claimed sexual assault, except when it became convenient to fit Christoph's narrative to provide evidence of a systemic problem. And no, it's not a coincidence that this activist has done a ton of media. Did Christoph know that there was a contemporaneous account from one of the two named alleged victims that does not claim sexual assault? Did New York Times editors know the person being cited changed their story? Why would he even change his story? If he was sexually assaulted all the times that he talked about the horrors committed against him by the Israelis, why didn't he ever mention it? Because it's nonsense. And in New York, about 200 Jewish and pro-Israel demonstrators gathered outside the New York Times headquarters in Manhattan to protest a recent column by Nicholas Kristof. There you go. Alleging systematic sexual abuse of Palestinian inmates by Israel. The protest, organized by End Jew Hatred, Hineni, and anti-Zionist groups, featured chants of New York Times, shame on you, and signs accusing the newspaper of spreading anti-Israel libels. Demonstrators also referenced the Dreyfus Affair and condemned what they described as media attempts to demonize Israel while ignoring Hamas atrocities. And, as I mentioned at the top of this video, Israel has now said that it will sue the New York Times over this article. Okay, and it says here, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar have threatened to sue the New York Times for defamation over the publication of an essay by Nicholas Kristof detailing allegations that Palestinian women, men, and children have been raped and sexually abused in Israeli military detention. Following the publication by Nicholas Kristof in the New York Times of one of the most hideous and distorted lies ever published against the state of Israel in the modern press, which also received the backing of the newspaper, Prime Minister Netanyahu and Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar have instructed the initiation of a defamation lawsuit against the New York Times, Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs wrote on Thursday. They defamed the soldiers of Israel and perpetuated a blood libel about rape, trying to create a false symmetry between the genocidal terrorists of Hamas and Israel's valiant soldiers, Netanyahu added in a statement. We will fight these lies in the court of public opinion and in the court of law. Truth will prevail. The threat, similar to one made last year, is part of a well-worn political playbook that aims to undermine independent reporting and stifle journalism that does not fit the specific narrative, Danielle Rhodes-Ha, a New York Times spokesperson, said. Any such legal claim would be without merit. Nick has covered sexual violence for decades and is widely regarded as one of the world's best on-the-ground journalists in documenting and bearing witness to sexual abuse experienced by women and men in war and conflict zones. They're defending him. Kristof's interviews with 14 men and women were corroborated with other witnesses wherever possible and with people the victims confided in. That includes family members and lawyers. Has it occurred to them that when you're talking to jihadist Muslims, part of their whole religious faith ideology about jihad is that you lie? Lying is, they're instructed to lie. That's part of their piety. That's part of their religious faith, is that in the context of jihad, you lie. And what kind of moron would believe this story? It's insane. But then it says here, it's not clear in which jurisdiction Israeli officials would bring a lawsuit or whether defamation claims could even be filed by a government. There's no chance a U.S. court would countenance such a case, said David Logan, professor emeritus at the Roger Williams School of Law and a media law expert. There's a legal consensus, he added, that the First Amendment bars lawsuits of prosecutions of critics of government brought by the government. Okay, so we're not even sure if a lawsuit could even work. Earlier this week, Israel's foreign ministry accused the Times of purposely having published Kristof's piece the night before the publication of an official Israeli report proving, it has the evidence there, systematic sexual violence by Hamas on and following October 7, 2023. The statement prompted the Times to issue a public response rejecting the allegations. The paper also publicly rejected allegations of internal discussions at the Times about source credibility and lack of evidence. They are standing behind this story. It's unbelievable. Netanyahu says that he's looking into the question of whether a country can sue a newspaper. And then the Wall Street Journal published a nice little piece here. Let's end with this. Kristof's Unbelievable Tale by Rachel O'Donoghue. A little-known Geneva-based NGO called Euromed Human Rights Monitor published a report in June 2024 alleging that the Israeli military was using dogs to attack Palestinian civilians in Gaza including to sexually assault prisoners and detainees in Israeli detention facilities. Quoting testimony attributed to Palestinian detainees, Euromed claimed that the dogs, equipped with surveillance cameras strapped to their backs, were let loose on prisoners, torturing them systematically and sometimes collectively. Euromed's report received no attention from mainstream outlets when it was released, and for good reason. Israel has linked the group's leadership to Hamas. There you go. Euromed, and that's why no one paid attention to this nonsense. Euromed has a documented record of promoting wild allegations against Israel, including claims of organ harvesting of Palestinian detainees, mass executions in hospitals, and denials of well-established Hamas activity at Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital. This week, Euromed's far-fetched allegations found their way into a New York Times opinion piece penned by Nicholas Kristof. And it talks about the Israeli dogs who were coached to rape prisoners. And he says here, unfortunately, she writes here, unfortunately, that isn't where the problems with Mr. Kristof's investigations end. Having reportedly spoken to 14 men and women who alleged sexual abuse by Israeli security forces and citizens living in the West Bank, Mr. Kristof names two of them, Sami al-Sai, 46, whom he identifies as a freelance journalist, and Issa Amro, who I mentioned before, a nonviolent activist who Mr. Kristof claims is sometimes dubbed the Palestinian Gandhi. Mr. al-Sai recounts for Mr. Kristof a horrifying experience of rape in detention after his 2024 arrest, after which he says he was dumped, bleeding and in excruciating pain, back into his cell. He claims the spot where he had been raped bore signs of previous assaults with other people's vomit, blood, and broken teeth crushed into his skin. Oh, wow. Such detail. Details of the assault related by Mr. Kristof differ from an account that Mr. al-Sai provided to the Israeli NGO B'Tselem. B'Tselem is a left-wing NGO that interviews these people to get their testimony of all the terrible things they've done to Israel, and then they try to get Israelis prosecuted. But the problem is that this account doesn't match that one. And they come on top of Mr. al-Sai's previous claims of torture, not only by Israel, but also by the Palestinian Authority. He once falsely claimed, he made false claims against the Palestinian Authority too. So here's the story. In 2017, he was arrested by the Palestinian Intelligence Services. His mother visited him in prison and alleged that he was beaten, hung from door frames and windows, and injected with an unknown drug 4 times a day. Both the Palestinian Public Prosecution and Palestinian Journalist Syndicate flatly denied his torture claims. And the syndicate said that when its members visited him in detention, he told them that the reports of torture were a false rumor. Okay, these are the people that Kristof interviewed, and he must have known. There's no way he couldn't do a little bit of checking to see who these people were. Bottom line, this was a deliberate blood libel, the craziest, type of anti-Semitism you can find. And like Batya said, this is an IQ test. And if anyone believes this nonsense, that is, that's the failure of the IQ test right there. That's what it is. All right, listen, the Jewish people have been through way worse than this and will survive this as well. But we are living in dark times when a newspaper that is apparently reputable, like the New York Times, can publish something on the front page alleging something so absurd. This is right out of, it's even more extreme than the crazy Nazi propaganda or the stuff about, Jews, sucking blood, the craziest anti-Semitic stuff. And we're seeing it in the New York Times, and it shows you how acceptable Jew hatred and libels against the Jews are, but it also shows you how desperate they are to deny Israel the proper reaction to the reports of the widespread rapes of Israeli citizens on October 7th and after. That's what this was designed to do, to create this kind of equivalency, so that whatever sympathy should be, there should be for what Israelis went through should be negated by this ridiculous libel. It's all very dark. Anyway, that's what's going on now with this story. I hope you found this helpful and interesting. Please drop a comment. Let me know what you thought. Please like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. God bless.